Yeah, as you guys should have my memorandum in front of you, and just kind of a number of topics that we need to cover as far as business goes for kind of wrapping up fourth quarter, and then looking at kind of our goals. And then I wanted to lastly give you guys kind of an update as what the city is doing, and also what we're doing internally, some of the projects that we're working on. And then also I just want to keep you guys abreast of what the city is doing, especially when we're the planning, the community development department is kind of at the epicenter, or at least working behind the scenes on a lot of the projects that are going on for the city. So I just want to be able to tell you guys and let you guys ask questions about that kind of stuff firsthand. So, but as far as the first topic, I did give you guys a Planning and Zoning Commission fourth quarter report draft, and so I looked at what kind of had been done in the past. I kind of deformalized it a little bit. I figure that the city council has seen these resolutions come before them and through them a lot of times, and so I just kind of wanted it to be a little bit less formal, a reminder with some less formal language. And so I kind of gave an overview at the top, which kind of wasn't done before. But anyway, this is at our last meeting, I was asked to go ahead and bring something before you guys, and just for you guys to look over. So any comments that you guys want to make on this document, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and make those changes to this document, and then we'll go ahead and I'll move that forward to council. So.
Okay.
Do you have any comments on this? You like it, Gary?
Do I like it?
Yeah.
I love it.
Honestly, I like the way the presentation is. It's very clear, very concise, and they know what it is. They've been working on it and the rest. The only thing I may have a little bit of a, and this is just a report, when we ultimately wind up going back to the language on dwellings, that's going to be, I don't know if there's a way to solidify that a little tighter, I guess, because it seems like we're kicking the can down the road a little bit in this respect. I mean, we've gotten a little tighter, things have gotten a little better on certain things, but I think this, I've only been on the commission here for, not quite a year yet, but this seems to be something that always gets volleyballed back and forth. So I'd like to know if there's any way that we can distill down what the major issue in the definitions that they have, because we seem to continue to have this problem, and if they can distill that perhaps a little better.
Yeah, and we were well, one is I am going to collect information from you guys, so when we do bring that back around at a work session, and I want to make sure we're going to do it when we have kind of a full chairs here. A couple of things is I want to bring you guys back kind of all the feedback that we've collected, but then also when we bring that back around to council, I would actually like to break it up into smaller chunks. We were talking about this the other day, and that way, yeah, we'll figure out a way to break it up into smaller chunks, so that when they go and approve that language, if there's something they don't like, they're not like dumping the baby out with the bathwater, so to say, where there's like, they're not rejecting it because of like a few little things that are really like nitpicking at them, that that will give us better feedback as to if we do get things that we need, that they would like us to work on some more, we can do that. And so, and those are, we will bring good feedback to you guys about specifically what some of the recommendations or suggestions were, feedback, and then we'll look at breaking those things up, so it kind of, so we're not kind of looking at the whole thing again if something does get kicked back.
I think you've distilled it down somewhat, because we brought it back to them before, and I think they just now brought it back to those specific definitions, and then if we can carve out what is the specifics that they want to, look at, I think, so we're getting there, but that just seems to be the linchpin for closing out this whole thing for us, I think.
Yeah, and it was interesting too that the two pieces that were broken out into smaller chunks that were actually kind of some of the more like higher level issues, I think, just from conversation pieces, those are the ones that went on through. And so, so it's kind of but yeah, we'll strategize around that and make it so it's efficient, and hopefully come to you guys with some good, solid recommendations that'll make it easy to kind of adjust and move through. So
great, thank you.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'd like to see their itemized issues with the wording, so we know kind of how they're you know, where they're headed with it.
Yeah.
Because we kind of took into account last time what the comments that they sent down. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're gonna take a time too to add a few other definitions, because I think this is this is a living document.
Yes.
It's like, for instance, we're getting requests like, can I build a tiny home on my property? And by definition, we can say, we don't have that defined. And by definition, you can't build a tiny home because it doesn't have a foundation and it's not, but you can build a small home. And so I think that there's just even some things that this concept of tiny home is very popular, and so we can add that definition. So we'll probably collect a few other things as well that were not even considered the first time around and throw those in there as well for some updating.
Okay.
It sounds like, sorry, if you don't mind, that, you know, having those definitions in there of more modern definitions like the tiny homes, that'll give somebody, you know, clear, I guess, guidance that you can or cannot do that. We know what that is, you know. If somebody says, well, I want to put a little home on this thing, and then if we don't quantify what a tiny home is or isn't, then they may put one there, and then they would wind up being in some sort of form of a violation.
Correct. Yeah.
This started in 2018, right? I was here at the end of 2018.
I couldn't tell you.
So that's 3 years we've been working on definitions. That seems absurd. And what's going to be the next little home that comes along to replace the tiny home? And then we'll have to go through this again for definitions.
It'll just add something to it. It won't be quite as large of a deal.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll be done with it soon once we get council's
Once we get
concerns
that.
back. Once we get, you know, their issues with it back. Sure we get it.
Oh, the city council?
Yeah. But, I don't know, I mean, I like the way the report's
Okay.
lined out, you
Yeah.
know. Maybe
Absolutely.
all resolutions come through them, so
Right.
it's not like they need
No.
something incredibly in-depth.
Yeah.
And it's broken down by month, they can just peruse over it. If they have comments or want to look back and see something,
Yeah.
they can do it.
Okay.
It's like having an abstract before a doctoral thesis.
Yes,
A little
yes.
bit.
Yeah.
Very handy. Yeah.
Okay.
So, all right. Well,
Yep.
if there aren't any other comments on that, what I did want to do is I did want to talk about kind of our priorities. And at last night's city council meeting, they did schedule the joint work sessions. So ours is going to be March 29th because the 28th
28th.
is a holiday.
Okay.
And so it will be the 29th, and our slot will be at 6 p.m. And I think it's going to go, I don't know the order, but either HP and PACA or PACA and HP, and they'll both get 30-minute sessions, and then ours will be 45 minutes with city council there. So, and I am going to check in because last night Mayor Terry said that they kind of held off on adopting HP's priorities, because that way they wanted to be able to have a conversation with them before they adopt them. And so I'd like to go over ours tonight a little bit, and then I think we'll probably end up doing the same thing. Those will be before them, and then we can discuss those priorities, and they can kind of help us, because really the city council is this commission works for them. And so they can make, we'll get something fine-tuned as much as we can, and then they can make adjustments from there at that time. So, yeah, I did want to, so I think it's handy just to always go back to code and kind of reference like what our duties of the Planning and Zoning Commission are, and so that there's those, that we interpret provisions of the title, make compliance determinations, review and act upon requests for variance permits, conditional use permits, and other matters requiring consideration under the zoning code. Review the City of Seward Comprehensive Plan on an annual basis and conduct a minimum of one public hearing. Those recommendations will be forwarded to the council. Promote public interest and understanding of comprehensive planning, platting, zoning, land management, and other issues relating to community planning and development. The commission shall act in an advisory capacity to the city council regarding the Seward zoning code, Seward comprehensive plan, official zoning map, official land use plan map, and other duties as requested by the council. The commission shall act in an advisory capacity at the Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission regarding the following matters: subdivision plat proposals, right-of-way and easement vacation petitions, Kenai Peninsula Borough Comprehensive Plan and Coastal Zone Management Plan Development, updates and amendments, and the City of Seward Comprehensive Plan amendments not otherwise delegated to the City of Seward. And so anyway, I just kind of drafted some. I took what was there from last year. Actually looked back about 3 years, and kind of went through there and kind of saw some things that continued and like what we are continuing need to work on, and then kind of threw a few things that I could see before us as far as short-term specifics. So I just kind of put 4 items up there for the short-term 2022 specifics. Was obviously through what we can do, contribute and collaborate as needed to be help part of the solution for housing issues that Seward is facing. I think that's kind of one of our #1 priorities as a community, and we play a role in that as kind of through our powers and what people put to us. And so I think that may carry over for the next few years. I think making recommendation updates to Title 15, the dwelling definitions. I do think that I know that the height restriction piece and coming up with some places that's one I've heard come up over and over and over again. I mean, there were conversations that you guys had about like view sheds, and some ways that we might be able to get creative to be able to increase like capacity and density where it makes sense.
Yeah.
Review the municipal lands inventory and management plan, and I know that went through you guys last year, and it actually, like, I'm learning about this too, but that's something we do every year. One thing that we are going to be doing this year is we are going to do a major reformat, and in the way that for part of our review is administration. We saw Kenai's plan, which they just developed a new plan, and it's very, very easy to read. It has a map that you see first for each section, so you can look at the map, it's right there. And then it's very simple, it's not cluttered. And so we're going to do like a reformatting, like not the content is not going to change much, but it's going to be a major reformat. And then also too, it's going to be, so that way it'll have like an atlas at the beginning that you can actually click. Like, oh, I want to see what's over at SMIC, and it'll take you automatically down to the SMIC page. And so it'll be kind of an active document that way. And then the other piece is kind of develop and execute a training calendar that includes planning and zoning training and Robert's Rules of Ordering training. And I would like to kind of get it so that we have like an annual or biannual schedule type of thing, so that it kind of keeps coming back around. So it's just something we always do. But anyway, we can talk about those short-term ones here first. If you guys have any additions or thoughts or things that I missed or anything around that, happy to make changes.
I mean,
I think I'm good.
not really. I mean, first, like the housing issue, like that's course number one that we continuously work with, and Title 15 we're always changing and adding to. The training's great, so it makes sense to me.
Well, during this portion, would we be even talking about, the R1 considerations, or is that more specific? One of the things that I wanted to look at, because of the housing problem in Seward, it's not so much housing, it's a lodging problem. Well, we have housing and we have to build it, but a lot of people keep building homes to make them Airbnbs or VBROs or this, that, and the other thing. And then people who want to live here year-round have some real difficulties with that. And they're also super spendy as a result, because people put a lot of money in it to get higher income.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a problem, because years ago, R1 was, you could never have something like that, and that was sort of a slippery slope, and now this is what we have.
Right.
There's so many properties in R1 areas that are those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if this is would this be the kind of thing that you'd be addressing as well in that first bullet, I think?
Yeah, and I think, so I do think, like, if we look back at our powers, B, it says the commission shall act in an advisory capacity to the city council. Mm-hmm. And so I think if anytime this body wants to take it upon themselves, like, hey, we feel like as a body we want to make some recommendations to council, or at least like say, hey, we feel like these things are we feel an issue here that should be tackled, and here's some ideas for that, or possible solutions, I think that this body can, you guys are an advisory body, can do that.
How would you do something along those lines? How would you, is there some sort of mechanism? Do you make a resolution to that effect? Or I'm not quite sure the process to recommendation for the council to consider something of that nature because that's a restriction of a lot of areas
Right.
in the community. I don't know that process. So-
I'm not super familiar with all those processes as well. I know
Don't either.
that you can write a resolution, and city council can either choose to pick that up or make recommendations, or at least have a discussion about it type of thing, and so that would bring it before them. I'm not sure if there's other ways of bringing something from,
I guess my one thought was like in the changing code, making a resolution as far as, the dwelling definitions. When we're looking at those again, to maybe look more closely at how those definitions can, help keep R1,
Right.
less Airbnb.
Yeah, because I think that's where you're having a lot of your problems, and, people are going to spend $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 for a home. You want to know who your neighbors are, and just not having a lot of traffic. And I know I've had a lot of conversations with folks that have lived here for lots of years, and new folks that move in here, they want to have a neighborhood that they know who's in the neighborhood. And, there's a lot of other opportunities. There's office residential, there's, R2 or R3 or a variety of other areas that you can, office, office commercial properties that you could build stuff, but I think residential should really be looked at that as a sacrosanct area for people, especially in the R1.
If I can just say, I get these phone calls, I probably have 3 since last week. Someone who is hired at the police department who cannot find housing. And all I can find is low-income housing. That seems to be the only kind of housing there is here. I had a therapist that was just hired at Seaview who might not be able to take the job because he can't find housing. There's a vet that I actually met who wanted to come out here, and she wanted to open up a, a veterinarian, and she's like, you can't find housing, and it's not feasible to think that you can travel from Anchorage or from Saldana with the weather. It's just not feasible to.
All the time it's
So
difficult.
I see a lot of that where people are calling and I'm like, we're Section 8, and do they know anywhere else? Well, you got Kimberly Court, you got Pacific Park.
They're all Section 8.
They're all Section 8. So where can these people,
Hence
I
they-
hate to say, but these honest, functioning people that are gonna do good for the community, we need them to work, but where can they live?
And when we have the Chugachmute building go in with the medical thing that's there, so we had an awful lot of people coming into town. Granted, Phil and, Larry are building their places and things up the way, but that's not gonna cover everything. And then again, brings me back to my thing, we don't have a housing issue, we have a lodging issue, because people are just keeping to build bed and breakfast. If people actually built single-family homes, or people just lived in them instead of turning it into a touristy thing, we'd probably have more stuff.
Yeah.
yeah. There are things that we can do, so I'll give you guys some more information on that for action or advisory capacity, that you can move that up to council. So,
We can also, if we don't have any scheduled for a work session, we can just brainstorm on something like that for a work session that's empty.
That'd be fine. Yeah, I think that's, I don't know what everybody else's opinion is, but I think that's a huge starting point for us for existing things beyond building, building's coming, but still to try to just get this fixed, because if you keep building and they keep making B&Bs, we're perpetuating the problem.
yeah. Would you be, it was Nicole Lawrence gave a really great presentation to PACAP a number of weeks ago. That's also something, it was hands down the best presentation I've seen with data on where we're at and where things are going as regards to housing and sewer. And so that's also something too, if we're gonna have a work session, we could have her present for 20 minutes and kind of go over something. And that might be helpful to work on as well, just get, that type of information here locally, so.
Does PACAB have a YouTube kind of thing like this too? Do they do that? Because I was about to say, we could probably bounce back in whatever date that was and take a look at her presentation.
Yeah, it's just recently, so within the last month here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I think she came and spoke at one of our work sessions a few years back, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
for something very similar.
I can always send that to you guys. I'll send you guys that date, so I'll kind of give you guys a list of things to send you guys. Any other comments on the short-term 2022 specific pieces?
I think that'll be enough.
One of them is technically enough, right?
Yeah, that's gonna take us a while, and it's all great stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and kind of, with that, like, some of them are kind of continuing, but like, there's specific things we have to address in Title 15, which is short-term, but then long-term is, it just doesn't have to do with dwelling definitions, but it's an ongoing, I want to remind people that it is a living document, and our code, there's areas that do need to be updated. We also want to look for simplification. It is really hard. If you start looking through that, like, I've confused myself by reading it, and with some of the exceptions and whatnot, and so we do want to create kind of a user-friendly doc, like a base document for people, so that they can help read their own code better. But I do think anything that you guys ever see, they're like, hey, this just doesn't make sense, or maybe like, this is not even an issue for us anymore. Or as you guys see things, this is a living document. We want to make it as useful as possible and not have any fluff in there or anything that's unneeded. So just to have that look at it that way at all times. And I did talk to you guys specifically, and it is like, we owe that's also another living document. And I think it's going to be changing this year because it does have our land inventory on there. And some of those lands that we are moving, we are getting rid of some of them, and so that will change in that way, or the use has changed. And I think your input on what we should do with some of that land in the future is also really important as we have these discussions, recommendations for that as well. So, and this is something that I talked to, actually, I think I talked to the clerk about this at one point in time, but the comprehensive plan, we do get that done every 10 years, it's kind of thing, but it's actually, we can actually be thinking about updates in the meantime and be looking at that, because we are in changing, I mean, the fact that 2020 and 2021 happened and now we're in 22, those things have changed the way we look at a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
And so we don't want to wait till 2030 to be looking and making updates on that type of those things. And so that's something I want to kind of keep in front of us, so that way we don't get, our community isn't down the road like in 7 years and we're like, wow, this thing is so out of date, it's not even useful anymore. And so that's something that we'll, as we kind of get our feet underneath this, I should say I get my feet underneath me a little bit more, we'll probably bring that into some places and take it chunk by chunk at some certain times. So
we could look at that kind of in, a work session where we don't have very much planned, or we don't have one, just kind of like the other, throw it in there and just kind of mull it over.
Yeah, or else, and even if we just want to take like a certain, like section 2 out of it, so it's just small, just like this, hey, let's be thinking about this, get that to you guys in advance, and just have some thoughts and discussions and recommendations around it, because we're in changing times, like the world, I mean, especially the last couple of years, so feel free to jump in any time if you want to. So.
I'm just enjoying it.
And I think this next one, I think, is kind of relates to what we talked about earlier on that first one, but look at current and future community needs to identify a wide range of strategies, including land use and zoning changes, to support the long-term vitality of the city. We have to be thinking 10 years down the road. We have to build for the community 20 years down the road, right? We have to be building that now. And so looking at community needs, we were thinking about, I mean, we're having discussions now about as we develop like the SMIC area over there, which we'll talk a little bit more, but if we're gonna get to the point as we start adding houses, like Safeway is not gonna be enough. And, I mean, what I'm saying is that we are, and especially if we put housing on that side of the bay and that type of thing, like, we're gonna have, like, which is some good problems to have, but we were talking about the more we develop over there, the more we need to have like more technically like equipment stored over there. We need to have more emergency equipment over there. We need to have more plow equipment. We need to have probably like a shed over there for city works equipment. I mean, like as we start expanding, we have to be thinking about some of these other pieces and how we're using our land and putting it aside for some of those things. And so we do have city land on that side of the bay too, not just on top. But there's some pieces that sit down below. There's some pieces that sit in back. And so I think that that's something too, as we look at, so be thinking, helping us think in the future and how we need to be setting land aside for like infrastructure needs to support the growing community, so.
Yeah, I feel like if we're gonna plan, if we're thinking of opening up more area for more people, we have to have a discussion about what's gonna support those people there.
Yeah.
You can't expect them to all come around, you know, it's just gonna be too much. We're gonna need to put more infrastructure for them.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I was talking with, who was I talking with the other day? Anyway, they were saying like, yeah, we need grocery stores over there. I was talking with Brandy Holmdahl, who's the PACAB chair, and you know, they have Bornstein fish processing over there, but they're like, we have like one food truck over there. And we need more like support in that area where you have to have more resources, whether it's places to eat, gas stations, places to go to the store that are, you know, and as that boatyard gets busier and busier, people need to like drive all the way up and around into town to get some things. I mean, there's just a need over there. And so that's just one example, but even there's examples that are in here as well. And so just to,
Yeah, especially with the Coast Guard going in there too. Got that whole boat there near housing over there for them and everything else, so.
yeah. So.
Well, Seward residents are used to that, driving around. We go to Seward and we go to Anchorage and we go to Saldana to get a head of lettuce or something. I mean, get your teeth fixed, to get a haircut.
Not to have to do that.
Trying to make it easier for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as they don't open McDonald's, I'm fine.
Yeah.
No, I think
That's written in the code, I think.
Yeah, fast foods, yeah.
There's a code that says no McDonald's.
It's like.
Certain fast foods.
I think there's some like certain types of change, or some restrictions around that type of thing, so.
Because I'll tell you, I bring my kids, we go to Anchorage, and can we have Taco Bell? And they get Taco Bell, and then all the way home they complain how horrible they feel. And I'm like, because you're not used to eating that junk anymore. You're not used to having to cook your food.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it looks like we have good leadership to bring us through all this.
Yeah, Selena and Courtney have got your back.
Yep. Selena?
So, but I really do think that this commission, like, you guys have some exciting and cool work to be doing here to affect change in the city over the coming years, and so. Anyway, there's a few more on the next page, but any comments or any additions, changes to any of those things right there?
No, I think they're great.
No.
Okay.
I think it is really important that we work with the Continuous, especially over there with PACAB in particular, because if we're not in sync, it's gonna be all bad.
Yeah, and that's why I was talking with Brandy the other day, that I said we need to be like really, we have that joint work session that we do for the SMIC overlay, but I do think it's important that we get a little bit unsiloed, that we work a little bit more closely together.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I have highlighted on my thing, work with the Historic Preservation Commission, led by Cheryl Cease.
Is that, or you get kicked out of the house?
By the way, there are two Cheryl Ceases in town.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
number 1 and number 2. And I get hugged by number 2. Anyway, it's pretty interesting. Anyway, the Historic Preservation Commission under Cheryl has really come a long way. Got this group of ladies who are really sincere. They don't have jobs, I mean, they're not working, so they put in a lot of time.
Yep. Yes, they do. Yep. No, for sure. And I do think we need to work more closely with both of our commissions and find ways that we can, I think, be in better communication.
Yeah, unity in the community is really important.
Yeah, and so I think that will, as we have those joint work sessions and hopefully maybe find ways to communicate better in between those times, that will be good. And, like working with PACAP, it says right there. And then, like with, obviously the Seward Bear Creek Flood Board regarding projects. And so one thing that did change this just as of recently is that the flood board manager was in our department, but that got moved to Public Works. Because really, like, Public Works actually deals with them all the time. Because anything that has to do with moving gravel has to do with with Seward Bear Creek, and that's what Doug has to deal with all the time. He's the one that has to sign out. Anything that like breaks the ground, Doug has to work with anyway.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so we kind of did a review on actually like how many contacts and permits like we were on and how many Doug was on, and so it kind of made this thing so that. But we still work very closely with Stephanie Presley.
Good.
Yep. And one thing that will be coming out, made official, I don't know if you guys saw when they were here, Dr. Suleimani, about the new tsunami inundation maps. And so those will be made, I think they're coming out in August officially. And so I'm sure that those was something that we'll take a look at, but really like after looking at the Indonesia floods in Japan, it didn't change our plan because we still only have like a couple of escape routes or high places to get to in this town. So it didn't change anything. It just
Simplifies
means
the process.
Yeah, but like there's going to be some changes that the inundation height level goes way higher. It's incredible, but it's kind of like the worst case scenario. But too, like it does change the thing. The way we look at like we do want people to get to those high ground, but like don't get in your car to do it because walking or running is going to be faster. Because last time like everyone gets traffic jammed up and you can't move and you're in gridlock and then you're like a sitting duck. And so, but anyway, that will be another kind of thing that I guess is related to the Bear Creek Flood Board as far as those new inundation maps that we'll probably bring before you guys at some point in time as well. Okay. Any suggestions, thoughts, recommendations on those?
No,
Oh, good.
joint work sessions with all these different groups, great,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'll do is we'll be in contact with you before, and we'll send these to council, kind of here's our preliminary priorities and plans, and then give them a chance to look at them, and then when we have our joint work session, I'm sure we'll discuss some of these items. So.
Good.
Okay.
I got a question, I'm sorry. As Planning and Zoning Commissioner training, I could use training.
Yep.
It's obvious by my remarks, so P and Z training. So what do you have in mind for P and Z training? Give us a computer and we gotta read it?
No. So what it is that
Actual
there's an organization. What's the organization that does that?
The American Planning Association?
And we actually, they just released an announcement about their upcoming training this spring. And they're going to give more detailed information actually on Friday. And it is, you can do it in person or you can do like virtual and you can watch sessions that way. And so I want to look at it first and we'll discuss it to see what's going to be helpful for you guys. There's nothing worse than going to a training that's not helpful or to watch something that's like completely does not, like this doesn't matter to me, or this is not going to help me. And so we're going to go ahead and kind of see what their virtual sessions are, or possibly in-person sessions as well. I'm not sure like what they're going to put out there, but when we get that, like I said, they're supposed to come out on Friday. We'll get you that information for some possibilities this upcoming spring. So.
Because we're here to help the community.
Yep. And we need to
No
train you.
other reason why you have planning and zoning, is
Yep.
to help the community.
Yep. 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 Commissioner Charbonneau and I were talking the other day that this is actually like this is the only commission that actually has kind of like some legislative power.
Yeah,
And
power.
so So it is, and it is really important because it shapes the community, I mean, pretty drastically. So it is, it's really important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Any other questions on this?
No?
Good.
How you doing, Brenda?
I'm good.
Okay. It's okay for a little ahead of schedule of work session topics, isn't it?
No, totally fine.
Great, okay.
You don't have to.
Okay,
go somewhere.
great. All right, so what I wanted you guys to do next is just let you guys know some internal things that we're working on that I want to make you guys aware of, and that you'll probably be seeing more fully, and I want you guys to be able to ask questions on. So the first one we did brush up on, but and what I can do is I can actually send you guys an example of the Kenai one. And it's really easy to read, and each map is great because, like, if you take the section of city land that they're looking at, they show you where all the utilities are, and they show you who owns the land adjacent to it, and so you really get a good idea of like all the things going on there. So that way, if you ever have questions, you can look back. Selena's a great map maker, which we're really thankful for. She has some GIS experience, so it's really good, and it's just going to be really easy to navigate. So I can send you guys the Kenai one, so you kind of see what ours is going to be moving towards in that one. But that is going to be kind of a major lift, and then thankfully, Selena's going to be working on the maps, and then Jody Kurtz is going to be working on kind of like the format and working that out for you guys. But I'll keep you guys up to date on that and send you guys, as we get it kind of shaped up, I'll kind of send you guys some look-see so you can see that. But that is kind of when you're doing a major reformat like that, it is kind of a little bit of a heavy lift. But I will send you the Kenai plan so you can kind of see it. One of the next thing that we're working on, that's kind of like a little bit of like stop and go on for us depending on what stands in front of us that day or that week, but we're doing kind of an empty lot inventory. And so we're doing kind of a physical, we're finding all the physically empty lots, and then we're looking at homes that don't have power, have not had that power turned on. We're working with the utility. And so we're going through and kind of identifying land that is not being used for kind of a future infill project. And another thing is, another kind of things that we're making discoveries as it comes up. Like, for instance, the parking lot that sits across the street over here, that's actually, I think, 4 lots as it goes this way. The Best Western parking area that they never ever use. Even on the 4th of July, it's completely empty. And so, but by code, they have to have so many parking spots for their hotel.
Yeah.
And which here we have, like, I would say, very prime city land that would be available for housing right there, but it's not being used because of the code issue that they have. And so we're also going to be in this city lot inventory. We're going to be and that's not just the only one. There's other pieces of land that are being used for something that are tied up in code that way. And so we also want to bring those forward to you guys for kind of an infill strategy. And so something like that might be something that you guys take up with city council and say, hey, could we relax this code? Because these lots aren't being used anyway, and those would be great lots for housing to be built on, or things like that. But we are doing, yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's way more complex than you think. But Jeremy's at the utility department is helping us find like how long utilities have been off, so we can say, hey, this house, even though it looks like it's a house, has not been used for a very long time. And then identifying those people, and we want to either, I would like to give like a survey to those people. If we can get survey information back from them, like, do you know you own this lot? But what are your plans in the future? Would you be interested in selling it? Would you be interested in developing it? Because I know that part of our problem is, if you drive around town and you start looking for empty lots, they are everywhere.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot of them that are not being used, and that is developing more housing, like new housing in areas like the Forest Acres campground type of thing. That's one part of the solution. The code enforcement or code changes around Airbnbs, VRBOs is another piece of the solution. Infill, I feel like, is another piece of the solution. And so if we can get you guys really good information on what's available and we can strategize around what we can do with that, that's going to be another big piece of the solution for like the long-term viability of Seward and creating home, housing.
Would we be able to tie into it? Because from my understanding, just, off the top of my head, from what you're briefing on here is, from my understanding, there's like over 100 empty lots scattered throughout Seward of some form or another. And, that's just empty lots. That's not the houses that are just parked that nobody's really living in or anything like this. Could we help involve the realtors here to help reach out and then possibly coordinate with builders to be able to start things going and work with those lots, whether it's city property or even privately owned, either way.
Yeah, and that would be kind of our plan, is to get an idea of like why are all these lots sitting vacant, and at least we can break it down to a couple of problems, but really like private business is going to be the way that we get those taken care of, whether it's like, hey, please call your local realtor, here's people that would love to help you. Maybe they could roll dice for who gets what lots to pursue, I don't know.
Yeah.
You always want to be careful when you're dealing.
A lottery.
Having been at the chamber, you always want to make sure you're giving equal opportunity to all people that have a stake in the game, right? But the idea is like, because if we can get those lots in the realtor's hands and talking with those people, that's really where the action is going to happen of development. So, but yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with you 100%.
That affects me.
Do you have an empty lot?
Yeah. My lot's next door, I mow it, I pick dandelions out of it, got a fireplace on it, outdoor fireplace on it.
But I would say that that's a little bit different. That's being used.
Well, yeah, I need room to stretch.
Right. But which I think, and you get into all these different pieces, but I do think that's like, if you bought two lots and you have one in your house on one, and you're kind of using that other one, that's not like, to me, like, that's not where the issue lies. The issue lies in these lots of like, I've lived here for like 12 years and like, there's been nothing in that lot. No one lives next to it. Like, I wonder like, whose it is.
These lots are 30 feet wide.
Right.
Yeah, that's mine
So
too.
30
Yeah.
by 100, 3,000 square feet.
Yep. Yep.
So anyway, if I sold that lot to somebody, my house is 2 feet from the lot's edge.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And those aren't like the empty lots like
They're not the kind of empty lots you're talking about.
No, that's not at all like the empty lots I'm talking about. So.
Try to get a realtor over there and I'll shoot him.
Well, that's where you're gonna put your tiny house that has a foundation.
Yeah,
And you're gonna be fine. It's
I
gonna
got a
have
motorhome, that's a tiny house, I just moved my motorhome from the side of the house.
Put your tiny house with a foundation.
So yeah, kind of one of the next things we're doing is we're going to be doing an audit ordinance to make, we found little places where our GIS zoning maps are not up to date. And so we're going to be doing an audit ordinance just to make sure all of our GIS maps are correct. And I would say that the next 4 items, that one being started, is kind of actually a bigger, I guess, strategy and project. We are working on digital archiving of files, not by, when I say we, it's Selena. But we are sorting through decades of files, and a lot of times files, you're like, this does not need to be kept, this is someone's like notes on something, or like this was a publicly, there's like 10 copies of like a presentation packet of something, and so we're trying to sort out those things and condense, and then but we're trying to digitally archive files, especially around properties, and we're going to kind of see what we have, and then we're going to be developing kind of an organizational architecture structure for how to place those, and a nomenclature, so that the way they're named properly according to what they are and where they're at. Because right now there has been zero consistency about that historically, and so it's really hard to find something, or you find the same thing and name 3 different things, and they're different versions. Selena is like, this is my own private version of hell, right? But really, if we can get all these archiving of files, documents, and maps and get them in a place, we want to be able to share them internally, because right now we get a lot of requests, and Brenda gets requests, and utilities get requests and no one knows where this document is or who has it. So we want to be able to have a document archive that's internally accessible to all departments, so that way it helps them when they need to go find something, they can find it really quickly because we know where it is. And then well, we're going to be able to share that on kind of like we haven't determined the format in which we're going to do that, but it'll be an internally shared thing so that people can have access to it, public works, utility, anything like that. And then ultimately, I think the long-term goal is we just had a GIS audit where an outside group went around and was talking to like the utility department, community development, all the different departments about what your needs are. But ultimately, I think where we're going is to catch up, right, Selena? Is to catch up is we can have a GIS like map where you could like go over a property, and then from that map you could actually access like the publicly accessible documents. And or else that's one kind of example of where this could go, but also another example would be like, so Rob Montgomery or his utility guys are out in the field and they can actually go make notes and make changes on their, as they're building something in for a new utility thing, they can just build it in so the map is getting updated like in real time.
That'd be huge.
Yeah, so or that they can have an iPad out in the field and they know exactly where that line is buried, and they don't have to be sorting through old maps or that kind of thing. And so that's kind of like an internal, it's going to be a multi-year project, but that's another thing that we're kind of working on that will be helpful to the community. And hopefully we want to, once we get that internally sorted, we want to be able to make a lot of those documents like public and those resources public, so that way anyone can get on this, like our GIS site, and go find really good information that people can get to us right now for. So yeah, so the next kind of thing we're working on is I'm working with the assistant city manager, Stephen, just really working on looking at prospecting, selling, and kind of developing city land. That's kind of what we're doing. We're looking at city lots. We actually found, Stephen found a city lot tonight that was not in our municipal land inventory plan. And so it's outside of city limits, but we do own a city lot that's off of like Grouse Creek Road. And so it's like, but yeah, we're just looking at how to, we've had lots that have just been sitting there for years that aren't doing anything, and those need to be, we're learning because the city has never really sold land before. And so we're kind of learning how to get into that, figuring that out, and so hopefully as we go along, that will become a little bit easier and we'll have a lot of that language developed. And then kind of the next project that I want to talk about is we do want to have kind of a user-friendly document for land and business owners. Something that where like if you come into our office, like I can just ask you what zone do you live in, or what zone do you have your business in? And that way I can just hand you like kind of like a one sheet or a brochure that will be very easy to read, that tells them like, here's what you can and can't do, or you want to do this and here's what you apply for, but it's not like having to sort through the table. And we want to make this available online as well. So that way we get so many calls, I'm like, help me understand what I can do or what I can't do. And we just need to make a kind of a user-friendly, like one-page document for those types of things that's very easy to read, because it's not, just the code makes it difficult to interpret.
Not a lot of people are code-friendly kind of readers either, and so it's difficult for them, and it is sometimes difficult to track it.
Yeah, and so I think that will save actually us time as people get used to having those resources. And I think it'll be less frustrating for people in the community if you are as a property owner or as a business owner. It's not gonna, you want to be able to have that information accessible, because nothing's more frustrating than like wanting to do something and you're like, I don't understand, I don't feel like I have the resources. And so we want to be able to do that.
Yeah, bullet point brochure would be pretty nice.
Yep, easy to read, very simple. Yeah, not a lot of code language. So
I feel like it would save people a lot of time.
So yeah, I'd say that's kind of our update from our department. That's not comprehensive, but that's kind of on top of like the normal business and stuff that we're working on. But those are just some projects that we're going to be working on over the next year, or beginning to work on over the next year. So I just want you guys to know kind of what we're working on, and that way is, if you guys think of something, you can be like, hey, have you thought of this? But a lot of these resources, like the land inventory, empty lot, unused house inventory, I hope that's gonna be a resource for you guys so that we can sit around the table and say like, how can we use this information to help, so.
That's great.
Okay, so I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update. This is all kind of like what we've been looking at. This has been discussed at City Council here and there on some of these items, but I know that you guys are really busy, and I'm sure you guys don't spend your Monday nights watching the City Council meetings. Just a couple updates on City Yeah. Yeah, you have a good reason to, so. The proposed Hemlock subdivision is what we're calling, which is currently the Forest Acres Campground. Last night, City Council approved a task order that accomplishes two things. One is going to be, because right now it's the big, huge lot that's connected to the bike park, so it's going to separate those into two different parcels. And then it's going to rezone that northern section into R1. And so we have kind of a preliminary subdivision that's been kind of drawn out of a way we could possibly do it, of 6,000 square foot lots, and it gives us 40. But then they're going to do the geotech once the snow comes off, and then I'm sure there'll be some adjustments that need to be made, usually a little bit, or like, hey, you need to have some water drainage here, that type of thing. And so. Then last night at City Council, they did approve to bring to do a task order to kind of engineer the utilities coming from where Diamond and Hemlock meet, and drawing it to the east, out to the highway basically, for two purposes. One will be for the subdivision, but also that will be the access for if for some reason, if it goes through, because the city's also looking at doing the due process of purchasing the two lots to the north that are known as the Gillespie lots between Dick Ralph and Hemlock. That would be where the new public works building is proposed to go if that does work out. And so that would also work for both those. There'd be utilities for both of those, for the Hemlock subdivision and for those lots.
Who would pay for putting in the utilities on the Gillespie property since there isn't anything on there?
What's that?
What would cover for, it's a rather expensive proposition to put the utilities on the Gillespie property, if we put that there? Is it by selling other city land that will help pay for that? Because that's a fairly expensive undertaking.
Yeah, and so luckily because of, it's weird, you cannot, there's like zero money available for utilities to like residential housing. But if you're doing expansions on like public works or anything like that, there's a lot of money available for that type of thing. And so I think we have some ARPA money. But yeah, that one is, we know we're very sure of the funding for that, because utilities are very expensive. I think it's like, I mean, it's like,
it's nuts.
No, it's crazy. It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars per quarter mile type of thing. It's like $200 a foot. So anyway, that's kind of that area right there is one of the things that we're working on right now. We were talking too, kind of what's going to happen is the first house that sells in there will be more expensive than the last house that sells in there, which is a good thing because it means it's doing its work, because the first one's going to be high demand, and as the houses sell in there, it'll hopefully like the demand will start to go down, so we're hoping that will be the beginning of helping lower home prices. But the contingency is when we do give that to a developer to build, it will be R1 single family homes. We want it to be like your typical like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,500 square foot to 1,700 square foot type of home, because that's what we need. We need a home that a family, like a small family, can live in. I'm sure they could probably do some adjustments and make ones that have like 4 bedrooms or something like that, but we need to make it so that these will fit families. So.
Is it possible, and this is just my question, because if we don't get the R1 thing for single family where they don't do VBROs, whoever puts that in, is there such a thing as like a homeowners association there, or like the developer creates it, and can he have sort of covenants? You know, I know back east in New York, they did all that kind of stuff, but I don't know if you could do this.
And the developer could, we're trying to make it as restrictive as possible, because R1 is obviously the most restrictive zoning that we can do. I do know that I've had people contact me recently, and it came up last night at the city council meeting. And so it's not something for us to decide as city administration, but people are talking about a cap on Airbnb and VRBOs. So like everyone that currently exists, you're grandfathered in, we may let some more people in, but it's for further development, not gonna allow them in, which I think is an interesting concept for discussion, like is that a solution that works?
We do it with liquor licenses.
Yeah.
There's other cities too that are starting to adopt caps as well.
Yep. And so anyway, that did come up last night in the comments last night. And I was contacted today by some people asking about that as well. So I think there's definitely like lots of discussions to be had about possible solutions for how we make that housing, the new development housing, matter as much as it possibly can, put it that way, you know.
Okay.
The greatest impact.
Good.
Yeah. The next thing is just want to talk about, there's no official name, but some people call it the SMIC Road, the SMIC Bench or the Nashville Bench, but it's that area, approximately like 900 acres that sits above SMIC over there. And it's interesting, it's been in the development plan for 30 years to like take a look at that.
Wow.
And so, but there's a task order that's out to do a feasibility study to find out if there's usable land, if there's reasonable access, and if there's for roads and also utilities. So they're doing some work on that now, and then what will happen is when the snow comes off, they'll do some geotech as well, and kind of give us, it's one of those things like, at least we know at this point and can stop like speculating for that property over there. If there's nothing there, we know, and we can like turn our attention elsewhere.
Yeah.
But if there is something there, we can look at it, and is it cost efficient to be able to develop something there? But at least we'll know.
That's good. Some old roads up there from when they logged it, but they were for bulldozers, so they're not real car friendly.
No, but it's interesting too that we've been talking about our engineering firm, because they've been, as they look at the land, similar to we do, but they nerd out about it. You guys are a special breed about it, you know. No, but it's pretty funny, but they are very, and I know this has also been talked about too, but if we do get houses up there, but people are like, well, let's do like Salteshi, where you have a multi-use trail system up there as well. Or build like a nice trail system, Nordic skiing, or a multi-use trail system, a mix to housing development if you can get something up there. It's also been talked about that you can now link that to the new tsunami inundation zone, and we do like SMIC actually does not have a tsunami route. I mean, they technically can go up the Nash Road a little bit and all pile up on the road, but there's not really like a safe collection zone for them. And so there's some other things that tie into that as well that may be helpful, especially for funding and utilities and that type of thing, possibly. So as far as the Fort Raymond property goes, we're still in the replatting process with Chugachmute, and the borough replatting is very slow right now. I mean, they were kind of backed up anyway, but Scott Huff that is leaving, I think he's left by now, which is kind of their planner guy. And so the reviewing time, they said, could take a couple of months. And so that's why we're still sorting through that one. It may be a little while yet. But what the plan is that after that gets replatted, the city is looking at, because there's a big giant power line easement that runs between the remaining property, and it's power line and utility easement. And so the city is considering like looking at replatting that easement in there, and then looking at selling like the two remaining parcels on both sides, because that easement has to almost be like a road, or like something has to like not go there. And so But we're kind of waiting on that replat to get done. But those are also two, we've had interest, people have approached us about, very interested in different pieces of property over there as well, and so, so that will be interesting, kind of what comes of that. And the Jesse Lee property update, we finally got our report back from Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, and it was really interesting, but they found some unexpected things in there, and it was because it's actually not what the Jesse Lee home was, but it was built on top of something. And so there was structures underneath the home, but what all came out of it is that they found mercury in there, and that just takes a little bit more to deal with because we actually do not have a facility in Alaska that can deal with that. And so so ADE, they have to relook at their plan now, and I fixed that, and then we're getting everything lined up, so hopefully when the ground thaws, we can finish up that mitigation and get that all cleaned up and taken out, and then we can continue to move forward on that. So that's another piece of city land that we're kind of waiting on, that kind of got held up. So, but we are finally, it doesn't seem like anything's moving, but there's actually been quite a bit of movement in the background, and so we're working with the engineering firm and Coldfoot, who did all the other work there. So, and there's a couple of other city lots. Like I said, we found that one out the road today, but there's one up on Home Lane, which actually sits right behind the lagoon, the houses that sit above the lagoon.
Mm-hmm.
There's one that sits up behind there.
That's gotta be a tiny place.
It's a quarter acre.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Oh, wow.
And so, but it's interesting that you have these lots that sit up there. And so, Doorway Playground last night, they're gonna wait till the other park is built before that one goes, which is great. There's a lot in Lowell Canyon. But there's just like, there's no reason for us as a city to be sitting on all these little lots when a home could go there. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the direction that administration is taking right now, so. And that's why those changes will start coming up on that land management inventory and use plan, so.
Well, by unloading some of this property, if people can use them, then you have more tax base too.
No, that is 100% it, because the more people that we get living in homes, mm-hmm. like that increases your tax base, which is the way, I mean, that's
just a win-win.
Sustainable funding, yeah.
Yeah.
So the next thing is, they are also doing R&M Consultants, our engineering firm, is doing a utility prioritization project, where they're looking at all the places in the city that we do not currently have utilities. And how do we get utilities to there, and kind of like a cost-benefit analysis for how much it's going to cost. Like the backside of Forest Acres, that's a pretty big stretch back there. And just looking at different spaces, like SMIC needs some more utilities run over there. And so, but we do need to eventually have utilities everywhere. And so what's the low-hanging fruit that we can get to like generate income so that we can continue to build that way? And so they're doing kind of a prioritization plan from how they see it, so that we know like what's the next best step for spreading utilities out for development. And the last thing is that the public workshop move. So the thing that if that does get moved out there, just so you guys know, the public workshop, it needs to be bigger. Like right now, like it's really hard in equipment because they actually can't park any of their equipment indoors. And so it sits outside, and then when they work on the equipment, they have to do it with the doors up. So even when it was like 8 degrees and blowing, they're in there trying to like work on equipment. It's hard on hydraulics. So they need a shop that will actually, they can keep their equipment warm, they can work on it when it's warm, and I think it'll actually like reduce maintenance costs. But what's great is that when they move that property, there's actually all the put homes where the current public workshop is. And so they do actually need to do another utility stretch because it doesn't run all the way through there. They did do their, ADEC did their, they did their sampling, and they got it all sorted, but really like there's not very much contamination, surprisingly.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's really quite good, and so that will be, once that gets moved, then that will be a great place for homes. So looking at some different types of configurations, maybe a little bit bigger lots on the ocean facing side, a little bit smaller lots on the inside. Parking's kind of an issue there, so they're thinking about how they can get around that, but that will be another great place for some smaller and great infill. You know, if you're like a young couple, that might be a great little place to have like a nice little like smaller home, not a tiny home, right? But a smaller home where you can walk to work, you can walk downtown, you can do those things. And so, anyway, that's just kind of, I wanted to give you guys an update on city projects, so that way you guys are kind of hearing from us on efforts to develop housing and solve some problems. So, any questions on that?
No, sounds great.
Yeah, I just have one, because, you have yours going on at the same time with the city and your planning and everything else, and we have ours on ours. And how, is there not saying is there a plan, but is there a timing thing for when we put things on our agenda or our calendar to make sure we match with yours to either problem solve or the rest, or is it once we have completed our stuff, then the city and stuff goes forward? Because I see some things sort of potentially hitting both of us. The city's moving forward on stuff, and then we still have stuff going on at the same time.
Yeah.
And I don't want any disconnects.
Yeah, I think we're all in a process of learning and kind of like feeling our way through the dark a little bit on some things, but I do think we are definitely having more conversations about prioritization and how can we be strategic.
That sounds good.
About that. And, addressing like where, like, it's great, we have all these houses built, but like, where are we gonna put the workers that need to build the houses? And we're looking at code issues around that right now. It's actually like, we found some stuff in Title 8 that we're looking at, because we also need to address that, so we need to be able to have a place to house workers. But you can actually house them on sites, on a construction site.
Well, guess where they buy their building materials now?
Where?
Anchorage.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting.
125-mile trip, buy a sheet of plywood.
Yeah. It's interesting though, like if you talk to a lot of builders, even before SBS, because when SBS announced that they were closing, I called up one of my friends. I was like, so how's this going to affect you? He goes, the only reason it affects me is it'll affect our, like, going to the store and buying stuff, like last minute stuff. Most of them, he goes, most of my stuff I order from somewhere else that gets it to me way cheaper than SBS can.
Oh my.
And so so they order from, people can order like a bunch of stuff on barges, or they can order it out of Anchorage. And Anchorage, it was cheaper for them to deliver like a home package out of Anchorage than it was to get it at SBS. So, but that's still a great giant need that we need, like I think we need a lumber store, and we need an LFS. We need a large marine supply store that carries everything from like sinks to pumps to.
Chanmery doesn't do that, or the ACE doesn't do
I think
that?
everyone kind of does these little pockets, but there's not like
Yeah.
this massive, comprehensive, like big supply store. So.
That's great. Thank you for that summation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody else have any more questions?
Any questions for Selena and Courtney?
Yeah.
I actually have one, a little bit for you, Selena, for the mapping stuff and things. I know the University of Alaska Fairbanks used to have a whole department that did stuff like that years ago. Kids were doing that. Can you, I don't know, maybe remotely, can interns help you guys out or anything on the things that you have? Or have UAF kids come down? Or because they have housing here as well. I didn't know if there was things that they could do. I mean, yeah, they do everything for, the marine sciences and stuff like this,
Right.
but I don't know. I mean, I know when I was superintendent at Spring Creek, I'd have interns from AvTech and all kinds of different places come through, and I'm like, yeah, I love cheap labor, which they learned and they, sorry, but,
Yeah.
helped. They learned, we had a good time, we got stuff done.
Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a good idea. Thank you.
I
Appreciate
know.
that. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, if there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn this work session at 7:10.
Thank you, appreciate it, that was good.